I need you to prepare for a dinner of 30, handle the cooking, and tidy up the house afterward. Take a moment to breathe, Addison. If my son has any requests, please assist him, my mother-in-law said with a hint of pride in her voice. But her words no longer held any sway over me. How could she expect me to handle everything alone? Don't make excuses. Just get it done, she insisted. No, I replied firmly, refusing to be pushed around. I won't let myself be treated like this. She stared at me in disbelief, her eyes wide. How dare you defy me? Just do what I've asked. Her voice was tinged with anger, and her face was flushed. With a deep breath, I responded, perhaps it's time I reconsider my role as a wife. Confusion crossed her face. My name is Skylar, a 28-year-old who embraced the role of a stay-at-home mom 2 years ago when I married Caleb. Early in our marriage, life was blissful, and my relationship with my mother-in-law was amicable. She had always been welcoming, greeting me with warm sentiments like, "Welcome, Skylar. Make yourself at home." But something had changed. Lately, her greetings had turned cold and curt, with remarks like, "You're late." The kind-hearted woman I once knew seemed to have vanished, replaced by someone more demanding and far less compassionate. "Skylar, can you assist with some chores around the house?" She used to counsel patience, saying a baby would come when the time was right. But recently, her questions have become more probing. "When will I see my grandchild? Is there something wrong on your end?" Her change in demeanor left me bewildered. It wasn't long before she began taking liberties with my time and energy. "Skylar, I need you to be here immediately." "But I've just dropped Caleb off at work," I protested. "That's perfect timing. I wouldn't expect you to leave before he heads out. A wife should ensure her husband departs for his day unhindered. And after he's gone, your responsibilities lie with your mother-in-law," she declared. I dreaded her daily calls. If I dared to ignore them, she'd ring incessantly until I conceded and headed to replace. It seemed more straightforward to appease her than endure her persistent nagging. But once there, she piled tasks on me endlessly, treating me like nothing more than hired help. The weekends offered no reprieve. I found myself tied to chores at her home all 7 days. "Do visit us this weekend," she'd tell Caleb, masking her true intentions. Once we were there, she'd slyly maneuver me into handling the chores. Since she never displayed this domineering side in front of Caleb, he remained oblivious to my plight. My father-in-law was frequently away due to his travels, often absent even on weekends, leaving my mother-in-law alone in their large home. The family household consisted of the parents and their 3 sons. Caleb, my husband, is the middle child, and both of his brothers are married. The eldest brother and his wife previously lived with the parents but moved out due to a job transfer. Interestingly, my mother-in-law remained ever so gracious towards the wife of Caleb's younger brother. On the occasional weekends when they visited, I observed the warmth she extended to my sister-in-law, the same warmth she once showed me. I was plagued with questions. Why did she treat me differently? Had I inadvertently offended her? Why was there a disparity in how she treated me compared to my younger sister-in-law? The weight of these questions grew unbearable, so I approached Caleb. "Your mother has changed her demeanor towards me," I began. But Caleb's response was dismissive. "What now? An issue with my mother? Please, no drama. This tension arises when you have high expectations. Remember, you two are technically strangers. You can't expect her to always be warm," he said, appearing somewhat detached. His lack of empathy and unwillingness to understand my perspective made me feel even more isolated. Caleb's indifference left a void in my heart. Heeding his words, I decided not to place any more expectations on him. Perhaps, like he said, he was just another stranger to me. New Year's was approaching, and traditionally, a grand gathering was hosted at my in-laws. My mother-in-law was insistent that I attend. However, I had always declined in the past, citing commitments with my own family during the festive season. In the beginning, I used to bend to her every whim, but lately I had started setting boundaries. This change in my behavior irked her. On the day of the reunion, she had something special in mind for me, a way to assert her control. This wasn't my first rodeo. I had been to their family gatherings twice before. The first was shortly after my wedding, during which I assisted my elder sister-in-law. The following year, I took on responsibilities like cleaning and grocery shopping. But this year, she had elevated her demands. "Skylar, I need you to shop for a feast for 30, manage the cooking, and afterward, tidy up. Once you've racked up here, if Caleb needs assistance, be there for him," she declared, radiating an air of triumph. However, I no longer felt obligated to heed her every demand. Her expectations were unrealistic. I couldn't possibly handle everything on my own. Don't give me excuses, just get it done, she demanded. No, I replied, standing my ground. I refuse to be treated this way. Her gaze sharpened and her voice dripped with anger. You will not defy me. Do as you're told. Her face flushed in anger, but I met her gaze steadily. Then perhaps it's time I reconsider being Caleb's wife. She looked taken aback. What are you implying? I'm considering a divorce, I replied. You think you can make such a unilateral decision? I won't stand for it. I don't need your consent, I retorted. A marriage and its dissolution is between two individuals. She bristled. Enough of your cheekiness. You're infuriating. The feeling is mutual, I replied. Suddenly, my younger sister-in-law, standing beside me, spoke up, surprising everyone. If Skylar leaves, then I'm considering the same. What's to stop you from treating me the way you've treated her? She turned to me, nodding appreciatively. I'd rather leave now before I'm the next target. I smiled, grateful for her support. Seems she's the wise one here. My mother-in-law's voice raised an octave. Enough, I won't let the two of you gang up on me. With the preparations for the event underway, the men of the family, including my father-in-law, my brothers-in-law, and Caleb, had been around since early morning. The tension was palpable, and it was evident that a confrontation was looming. The commotion drew the attention of my father-in-law and brother-in-law, who approached to see the cause of the disturbance. Why is there so much chaos? My father-in-law questioned, his voice reflecting concern. I can't stand her mistreatment any longer. I began, gesturing towards my mother-in-law. I'm considering stepping away from my role as a wife. My sister-in-law chimed in, and I might do the same before I become her next target. My father-in-law's gaze landed squarely on his wife. You broke your word, he accused. What promise are you referring to? She feigned ignorance, but her eyes betrayed her. You vowed never to harass a daughter-in-law again, he said, anger evident in his voice. Caleb, who had been silent till now, asked, Father, what's happening? Apologetically, my father-in-law revealed, Maria, the truth is, your eldest brother and his wife didn't move because of a job transfer. She mentally tormented his wife until they felt they had no choice but to leave. Realization dawned on me. That explains their absence from family gatherings. When my eldest son discovered the torment his wife endured, he was livid and took his wife away. I reprimanded her, my father-in-law continued, and she begged for another chance, swearing never to repeat her mistakes. I trusted that she had changed, he sighed, looking downcast. It seems I was mistaken. It's not your fault, Caleb reassured him. Turning to me, he added, Skylar, let's head home. As for today's preparations, Mother can handle them herself. A sense of incredulity filled the room. How could you expect such an impossible task from her? My father-in-law directed at his wife. Had you been kinder, more understanding, we wouldn't be in this mess. The blame lies squarely with you. Now, Maria, it's your choice on how to proceed. I nodded, grateful for the support. Thank you. Caleb, clearly unsettled, addressed me with a hint of desperation. Skylar, please tell me you're reconsidering? We can distance ourselves from my mother and continue as a couple. I looked him squarely in the eyes, disappointment evident in mine. When I needed your support, when I reached out for help with your mother, you chose to ignore my pleas. I fear if we face challenges in the future, you'll prioritize your ego over our partnership. I can't be in a marriage like that. I want a divorce. The gravity of my words hung heavily in the air. Without waiting for a response, I headed home, packed my belongings, and sought refuge at my parents' home. Seeing the dynamics play out, my younger brother-in-law, deeply in love with his wife, made a decisive move. He told his wife he'd choose her over the family home if push came to shove. Unsurprisingly, they both departed from the tumultuous environment. Left to her devices, my mother-in-law bore the brunt of her actions. She single-handedly prepared for the large gathering, each dish a testament to the consequences of her previous choices. Rumor has it that later that day, my father-in-law presented my mother-in-law with divorce papers, ready to sever their bond if she continued breaking her promises. It was a masterstroke on his part to let her handle the entire reunion meal, even when he'd resolved to part ways. With her departure, my elder brother-in-law and his wife can return to their family home, their worries eased. They've since been blessed with a baby, and the sight of his grandchild brings unparalleled joy to my father-in-law. As for me, I managed to finalize my divorce from Caleb. He hesitated until the very end, but the mere mention of legal intervention expedited his decision. Notably, Caleb was the only one amongst his siblings who neglected his spouse's feelings, leading to strained ties with his family. His brothers always held their wives in high regard, so when their partners voiced their distrust of Caleb, it was a consensus they couldn't ignore. Now he's estranged, struggling to find comfort in the family fold he once took for granted. And truthfully, it feels like poetic justice. In stark contrast, my life has turned a new leaf. I've embarked on a fulfilling career journey, and the independence of living alone feels liberating. And adding a dash of excitement, I've also ventured into a relationship with a younger beau. With each passing day, I'm immersing myself in work, love, and the sheer joy of living life on my own terms.